Good morning. We are live, a little past 8 on December 20th of 2023. It's another Wednesday, and welcome to the Dev Talk Show. And here live with my co-host, Rich Ross. How are you doing, Rich?
Doing well, Chris. And like many of the children out there, I'm counting the days down to Christmas. So,
Yeah,
so
that's absolutely true. Definitely looking forward to some year-end time off and time with family because I have a daughter who will be out of school for the break, and so we'll hang out a little bit, and that'll be
yeah,
fun.
definitely. And I'm actually working on Christmas because I do. So we're doing the family thing for a little bit in the morning, but the local American football team, the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles, they play on Christmas Day. And
Okay.
one of the cool side jobs that I have is being on the sidelines to handle the Surface devices to the coaches and stuff. So,
Right.
yeah, we're going to be working.
So they have a Christmas Day game. All right. Well,
They do. So
at home.
at home, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there will be snow. I have to check the weather again, but it'll be a good time out there. I'm sure the crowd will be very festive.
I was looking to see what the weather would be like because I think the high, I mean, again, we're still about a week out, but I think the high was something like 50. And part of the reason I was looking was to ask myself, do I want to try and run the smoker on Christmas Day, or will it be super cold and use a ton of fuel? 50 doesn't sound too bad. If it was 30, I'd
No.
be like, nope. So in any case, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are going to look in a little bit. If you've been here in the last couple episodes, you know that we have been looking pretty heavily into the Blazor Identity template because I think our feeling is that when you pick that authentication option in Blazor, you get a bunch of code dumped into your project that isn't there in the other templates. And we're not talking about a little bit of code. It's not one or two controls. It's not one or two classes. It's a lot. And you own this code now. And so I've spent some time, and we've spent some time personally trying to explore it a little bit, understand it more, because I'm certain that all of us will want to either know how to use it as is, how to modify it if we need to, or figure out what we can and can't remove. Before we start, I wanted to share with everybody something that it was announced actually a couple months ago in the end of October. And I just don't remember if we've talked about it. And so many folks who watch the show may know that there are certifications in the Microsoft space. A long time ago, they used to be called MSDN certifications. Now I think one of them is called, now there's Microsoft certifications, but they're not just for developers. There's some in IT. Some of them are more strategic. There's different paths. Like there's a Microsoft Azure developer associate, and then a solutions architect. And there was a starting exam called Azure Fundamentals, which I took a few months back, and we talked about that experience on the show.
Mhm.
And that one was actually a little shaky for me because it's less of a developer exam and more of a strategy exam. And so I actually feel more confident if I were to go ahead and move forward on the Azure developer side, because as I've looked at those practice questions, those I'm just like answering.
Right.
Where in the other one, it said, okay, so given this strategy, would you want to go with hybrid or private, or is this cloud a hybrid cloud, or is this an example of a private cloud or a public cloud? And I'm just going like, it's not that I don't know it. It's just one of those things where I go, not maybe right down the middle of the plate. So
Right.
this one, but I passed it. So,
There you go. That's pretty awesome. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's fun because that's a lot of the conversations we have here. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so here is what I want to share though, because this is a pivot on this. It's a slight, it's not that the other stuff isn't there. And I don't think anything's changing at all.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple months ago, there was this blog post in the Microsoft tech community announcing Microsoft Applied Skills, the new credentials to verify in-demand technical skills. And so the difference between the two is the examination and learning process is different. This is an entirely self-service process.
Oh wow.
It's not that the credential process doesn't have a self-service component. For example, I chose not to go to like a training,
Mm-hmm.
but I did choose to pay for the pretest. And I'm actually glad I did, because it at least gave me a sense of what the test on the machine that I went to visit was like.
Okay.
This particular applied skill set is entirely self-service. You would do it all on your own machine, your own devices. And it does have a verification component at the end. So this, let's talk about what they have here. They say there's an initial set of credentials we will look at, and then they say that there will be additional credentials. Right now, we've got like secure storage for Azure Files and Azure Blob, configure secure access to your workloads, Azure Monitor, develop an ASP.NET Core app that consumes an API, which I think is the one I'm going to start with when I have a little time over the break. You can go get these credentials. There are free self-paced learning paths that work on Learn. I'll show you one in a second. And then you earn your credential by passing an online exam.
Okay.
And this is all automated and it's on demand. So when you go to Learn, we see this initial set of credentials here. We can see I've already clicked on this one, develop an ASP.NET Core web app that consumes an API.
Okay.
And if I click it, it shows you the learning path to prepare for the assessment. And it's really not that long, which is kind of nice. This particular one, you are going to create a minimal API. Then you're going to create Razor pages and render the responses.
Nice.
And then there is a 2-hour assessment that you are allowed to take. It uses an interactive lab. And then I suppose once you launch the lab, they have a 72-hour waiting period. I imagine, who knows how that works. But I have not tried this part yet.
Okay.
Here's the thing that's important. I have zero insight into the future of this in terms of, will there be thousands of these applied skills, hundreds, dozens? Right. What will there be? I have none. I also have no insight into the future of the cost. But today, December 20th, and for the last couple months, this is free.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a big difference from the credential path.
Right.
And just like the credential path, when you complete one of these, it ends up on your transcript, your Microsoft Learn transcript. So something I actually want to attack over the holidays.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
That's a good free resource for those people who are interested in getting into, in this case, ASP.NET Core, but certainly there's some Azure pieces there as well. It's a good place to get started. And It looks like the time commit wasn't that much. I mean, the test was a couple hours, but even when you look at the courses that were part of the learning path, it says the timing on those, and I think they were, about 2.5 hours of time spent working on it, which is still, a reasonable amount,
right?
Or not that long,
right? Especially when I think going in, I feel like I would like to believe that this will be mostly review.
Mm-hmm.
I feel pretty confident I would like to get this assessment done, and then the great thing is some of the other ones might be interesting to do. So that's just something I wanted to share. These it looks like I said, it looks like, what do I see? 3, 6, 9. There's 3 times 4, maybe about 14 are sitting here. And I think it's interesting that maybe I have no insight into whether this will always be no cost, none, zero. But the key for me is that maybe. And so Made by GPS is a channel on YouTube. The friendly name is Cloud with GPS, and her channel is great. She before she started at Microsoft, she used to just do cloud videos, like kind of like getting started with the cloud and using lots of different clouds and really focused on that content creation.
Mm-hmm.
And now is with Microsoft.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
and made this video, let's see, about a month ago. I'm going to go ahead and share the link in our channel. I just wanted to promote this because this was one of the first videos that I saw promoting this. So, and basically mostly says some of the things that we said here, but at the same time, you know, same blog post. But I do recommend this channel. It's a great place to learn. It's very focused on cloud and getting started with cloud projects, how you yourself might get into engineering. And I think part of it is sharing her own story and learning path of being self-taught, learned how to be a developer in the cloud, and you can do it too, right?
Nice.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, this is Gwyneth's channel, and I actually had been following her and seeing videos now and then before she had started at Microsoft. So
Excellent. I was not aware of her channel. I'll have to
yeah,
put it in the subscription line.
yeah, she's been a guest on some other shows too, but definitely somebody who I think it's nice to have on the radar. I think a lot of people could tell, like, there's different folks that I kind of have on the radar, and I follow them, and then I figure, hey, everyone should know about them. So,
Excellent.
All right. Well, let's see. Where did we leave off last time? We started a new Blazor project last time.
Mm-hmm.
We did that in, however, we did that in from the command line.
Right.
So that means, first of all, what that means is when I look at the, oh, interesting. I thought I did this from the command line, but this one is still using local DB, because I thought for sure that I was trying to not use local DB. Unless I know what it is. This is what project did I just pull up? Sorry, I did do that from the command line. Okay, I remember now. What I did is I picked the wrong solution.
Oh.
So let me backtrack, and we'll remember what we did last time. Is we went to the command line and created two Blazor projects. One I called Identity and one I called None. And the difference between the two was whether or not we included the parameter to create the identity individual accounts piece. And so part of what I was thinking, because we didn't really look at this too much, was here we go. Data source is data app.db cache shared. So that means I can see our local, our SQLite database is just sitting right here in the solution. That's kind of cool. And that's what happens if you create a Blazor project by default with the .NET CLI, is you get a SQLite backing store for your identity. And if you do it in Visual Studio, by default, you get a local DB backing store, which most of us who install a .NET workload or an ASP.NET workload are going to have local DB on the machine.
Right.
I do like local DB. I think it's a great way to have SQL Server as a developer on your system. That's pretty easy to manage, and just throw databases away, and you don't have to worry about, oh, is this a shared database that Rich is using? So so I like that.
Yeah, definitely comes in handy.
Yeah. Now, I believe this other template, this Blazor app 5, was my example when you create it from Visual Studio. As you can see, we're getting to the point where I have a lot of samples running around. So I just don't want people to get confused. The word include is the name of the project. So when we're running around this project and we see it say something like using include.data, that's not a NuGet package. That's not some cool library. Include is the name of the project. So that namespace is getting splatted kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
And
I think, the etymology, if you will, of that name was because we included the authentication pieces.
Right. Yeah. The other one was None, because we wanted to take a quick peek at the difference between the two projects, where your program CS has all this extra stuff now that isn't sitting in the quote unquote none project. There's something that we didn't talk about last time, and it's that when you create this project with which I did, I chose interactive auto global for the render mode, which
Okay.
means what I'm saying to Blazor is every component has the ability to be rendered on the server or the client, and you, Blazor, you pick for me based on everything we've talked about on the show and everything that you can see in all the videos. Typically first time load Blazor server while it's streaming down the WebAssembly, and then subsequent loads will be WebAssembly. So what's interesting is that I say that, and then if I go to, let's see, it won't be app.razor. Is it going to be routes.razor? Did I see this? I'm looking for where we know for sure that it is. I think it's something that you see down here. So render mode interactive auto. Oh, you know what I must have done in this one? I must have said, did I say component by component? I might have said by component. We're about to find out though.
Okay.
So these two components say render mode interactive auto. If I can just check real quick, because there's something specific that I want. Oh no, that's not an interactive auto app. Okay. The reason why I want to bring that up is because I found something interesting when I asked myself, okay, why, if this is an interactive auto app, the Blazor identity components are all living here in account. They're in the quote unquote server project.
Right.
So what I was thinking was how if I'm supposedly global interactive auto, how does Blazor have these components sitting in the server project, and how does that work? Because if Blazor is calling for an interactive auto component, isn't that going to blow up if it's calling for it globally?
Right.
So I wonder if when I did this, it might be easier to create a new project to prove this, because I wonder, create yet another new project. I wonder if when we did the show the last time, I didn't stick with this. So let me do Blazor Web App. This is now Blazor Web App 6. And we're going to say, because here's what I wanted to look at. I want to say individual accounts. I want interactive render mode to be auto, but I want it to be global.
Okay.
Because what I couldn't get out of my head was like, well, wait a second. If I do that, and now I go to pages, yes. So I must have done something different. I must not have done global when we created the include project. Because now when we look at the client app, every component, every page, auth, counter, home, and weather are all listed here in pages. The reason why is because we have told Blazor that even the home page, even this, is interactive auto render mode. Everything. Okay. Everything is. And it's because I chose global. And where can we see that? It's not in nav menu. What did I do with app.razor? Okay, yes. Okay. So in global mode, when we've looked at global mode before, this is where it's coming together. When we've looked at global mode before, but we didn't have identity, right, it would say head outlet render mode equals interactive auto.
Right.
Because it's saying, you told me everything is interactive auto.
So then let's just set it here.
Yeah, let's just set it here in app, and it's over, because render modes do carry down, they cascade down components. In the body, as we are routing the different, as we're using the route component that's going to house links off to the other components, let's just set it right here. Render mode for page is interactive auto. But when you turn on individual accounts, we get some slightly different code. We get this render mode for page property, if you will. It's that that is being called. It's not being assumed. And the
Okay.
reason why is this little bit of code I discovered last week that I didn't know was here. So in this app.razor component, because app.razor is itself a component,
Mm-hmm.
it is checking to see if it can reach the HTTP context. And if so, it says, okay, are you requesting something that starts with account? And if you are, then don't set the render mode at all.
Wow. Okay.
Otherwise, set it to interactive auto.
Okay.
So
So
to me, this feels like an override.
kinda.
Right. It overrides and says, when you see account, which means all of this, all of these pages,
Yeah.
don't use interactive auto. Instead, server-side rendering,
Right.
not even Blazor server. So that made it very interesting. And that sort of led me down the path of like, okay, folks who used ASP.NET Identity in Razor pages will recognize how these pages look and feel. It's just that instead of them being included in your project in a bundle, you have to pull them out one by one with the scaffolding process to customize them. Here, here they are. There is no scaffolding process. There they are.
Mm-hmm.
Login, lockout, invalid user, all those pages, they're all there. But they are going to be rendered in Blazor, in server-side rendering. And that makes some sense to me because one of the things I always wondered, one of the things I kept wondering about this process is authentication and authorization are inherently server-side processes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the security aspect that goes along with that.
Right. Some authority has to verify who you are. Now, if we talk about modern authentication with a provider, whether it's your own Windows domain or the new name for Azure B2C is Entra External.
You got it.
Okay. And the reason I want to make sure I let everyone know it's the new name is people watching may be totally familiar with Azure B2C. Google Authentication, anything. When somebody comes to authenticate, somebody has to be the authority. You could be using identity server. It doesn't really matter. And we're going that server is going to supply something, whether it's a token or something that we have several ways we do authentication on the web. One of them is cookie-based authentication, where we say, hey, we're going to hand your browser back a cookie, and we're going to say, just keep sending this back to us. And when you send it back to us, we're going to go, okay, well, I recognize the data in here that I stored.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is rich and we're good. The other prevailing method that I kind of feel pretty comfortable talking about is sending down like a JWT or sometimes a JOT, called a JOT, to a SPA. And then the SPA says, well, I'll find a way to hang on to this. And I don't want to get into the whole issue of access tokens, refresh tokens. Like, that's all really important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But a server has to be involved.
Yeah.
And so for an app that we might call an offline app, or if the client can render whatever it wants, I, as the server, have to make sure I only send down the data that you're authorized for. And I would like to only send down the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that you're authorized for. But I have to recognize as a developer that you, the attacker, can do whatever you want on the client side. So, you might show a page that looks like it's an authenticated page, and it's my job to just simply not send you the data so that you can render that page correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I should also not respond to your requests that should only be listened to by an authorized user appropriately. So I could trick the client user all I want into, okay, authorize, do something you're not that I'm not supposed to be allowed to do or see, and then on the server side I'm not supposed to let that happen. And that's being done here in identity by putting all those components and pages in the server side.
Yeah, and I think that's partly because we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about bringing that code down to the client side. That code potentially could be modified by the user because it sits in their environment.
Right.
So we don't want them, doing some of the security hacks,
Right.
even though it's on their machine.
Yep.
We want to kind of prevent that. So
it doesn't even have to be a malicious actor that the user's unaware of. I could be the malicious actor.
This is true.
Like I'm an authorized user for maybe part of the app. So I feel like, okay, I kind of got my foot in the door. Can I figure out, can I make the same call that I would have made if I were the manager? And does it work?
Right. That's a good point.
And we're hoping the answer is no. We're hoping the answer is no. That doesn't work, is that call comes in and it's like, well, wait a second. You're not, sure, it's all valid, but you're not authorized. The API doesn't authorize it, whatever. So it doesn't work. So it's a little bit of a roundabout way of saying, for me, if this is global interactive auto, and we know that Blazor has Blazor sets that all the way up here in app.razor, how does it switch it back to server? And this is the answer.
Yep.
The answer is they got this tiny bit of code that basically says, okay, can I get to HTTP context? And can I check to see that the request path starts with account? So the lesson to everyone is, if you use the template and you decide you want to alter the routing, this is an important thing to change.
Yep. Yeah, you got to make that change here as well. So,
and we keep running into little bits and places where when you take on these templates, it's okay to use them as you are. You can go a long way by just saying, you know what, we're going to use them as they are, and we're just going to start making them look like our look and feel. But at the same time, you have to do things like this, where we've got the email send, right? Let's see, what is it? The email sender, where they tell you you're going to need to implement your own email sending, because we basically have a link and the link just does it, and you don't want that.
Right.
And so there is work to do for sure.
But it's so much less work than if you were to try and throw all these in there yourself.
It is less work, and in some respects, it's kind of like a checklist. It might be really interesting to create that checklist.
Oh, yeah.
And say, here's all the places we've discovered. I don't think I have them all, and certainly haven't written them down. But like, here's one place. And then there's also, I know specifically when you confirm the link, when you confirm email, I think there was a place somewhere where it said, like, hold on, you've got to register confirmation. Is that the one? Yeah. I think it says here, once you add a real email sender, you should remove this code. So that means this is another place I would put on the checklist, But
interesting.
Yeah, it is. I think it's really interesting. So last time we were here, this is how far we got. I got to let the app come up. What I must have done when I built this app is I must have said component by component. So it's strange, the slight nuances based on your choices. And while this is the Blazor sample app that has a counter that's not authorized, and it has weather that doesn't require authentication, doesn't require, this particular page does, the auth required page, and it automatically redirects you to login. But what I was wanting to work on was, what if I don't want login to be a page? What if I want it to be a component? And we got that working.
Yeah.
This is a login component. And I believe that this is our sample. username and password. And so once you are logged in, the login component changes and says like, well, I'll show you a login button. I'll show you who you are. And the auth required works. And this particular manage account page works. All of this stuff works. Now, this is stuff that's built in. We did not do this.
Yeah.
But let me go ahead and log out, because there is another thing I'd like to do. So now that I've logged out, when I click, let me double check that this works. Yes, I've clicked login. And one of the things the login component does is logs you out, which is how I figured out how to log out. And that's how we implemented the log out button. So there's this other section, use another service to log in. Now, this is interesting. It's like, it's smarter than I am. And it says there's no external authentication services configured. And I'm like, well, that's pretty impressive. How do you know? And they'll even say, like, see this article about setting up this ASP.NET application to support logging via external service. So if you don't mind, why don't we see how does it know?
Sure.
And then let's see what we can learn from it.
Okay.
So the way we're going to figure that out is we will open their login page. That's login.razor. People who were here last time will remember that I created my own login.razor, which is a component, but we're not going to concentrate on that. This is login.razor. It's untouched from the template. And as we go down the page, we can sort of squint. If you know HTML pretty well, maybe you don't know Blazor components, you can still kind of squint and see, okay, here it is. Here's the login. Here's the email label, the password label, the checkbox for remember. These are using the Blazor form components, which are kind of nice to use. I know if you're brand new to Blazor, I know when I was brand new to Blazor, I was actually excited that I could use plain old form elements. And I was so stubborn. Like I stuck to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I realized is that there's a lot of value in these components, because the way these are all set up, you can supply validation messages, so that way you get client-side validation pretty quickly, pretty easily. So login button. Now, if I keep going down, you probably remember seeing this on the page. Use another service to log in. Here it is. And then after that, here's a component, external login picker.
Huh.
Now the question is, whose component is that? Like if I go to edit form and hover over it, I can tell. And if you're new to Blazor and ASP.NET, hopefully this little tidbit helps. I can tell that this is a component in the core library. Its namespace is Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components. But when I go to external login picker, I remember this project is called include.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I own this. I had no idea. So let's go find it. In account, under account, besides the pages folder, we also have the shared folder, and these are shared Razor components. We have talked on the show before that don't get too confused and hung up on the naming of Razor, Blazor components. In fact, even the documentation acknowledges that Razor components are often called Blazor components because we use them in Blazor. But what they are is components that have Razor markup. They can be included as Blazor components, but it turns out we can also use them in other places too. So this is the external login picker. It brings in the sign-in manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then it brings in this identity redirect manager, which we own. Surprise, surprise. Here's more code that we own. And it simply asks, well, it's interesting how it's asking this question first. How many external logins are there?
Okay.
Well, how does that happen, right? This is a Razor component, so we should go down to the code section. And here in the code section, we see on initialized async is firing, and it is basically using the sign-in manager, which has a method. Can you get me a collection of the external authentication schemes that are configured?
Oh, okay.
throw it in an array.
Yep.
So if I F12 into it just for a moment, we can take a look at what this looks like. Really not a complicated looking method. It's just simply sitting on sign-in manager, and sign-in manager's got this private data member of all the sign-in schemes that were provided. And then what it does is it takes a quick look. It doesn't just want to return, it returns the schemes that have a display name. So I find it interesting that's how they decide. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying that's how they decide whether this is an external login scheme, and then they return that. And so eventually what you can see is going to happen is that if there are 0, then we get the text that we saw out there.
Right.
So I think we should add one.
Yeah.
And we'll see this change.
Do you have one in mind we want to add? Because we have a number of different to pick from, right?
Yeah, sure. In fact, if we go to this link, I'd be curious what this goes to. I think it's going to go to the one I think so. Yes. Okay. So it goes to this in the documentation.
Nice.
Facebook, Google, and external provider authentication in ASP.NET Core. This is definitely the place I would have gone. We're in the ASP.NET Core identity docs, not the Blazor section. I mean, Blazor's in here. I got to go up a little further. But in the security identity section, authentication, ASP.NET Core identity is where we're getting this. Shows several different providers. I recall the Google one being pretty simple. So the main steps for the Google one are we need a Google client ID and secret, basically meaning that in their console, we're going to need to declare what they call a project and then get a client ID and secret for it. We're going to want to store that safely in our application and then configure the authentication. And that's pretty much it. This isn't really a very long article. So I'd like to think we can get this done pretty quickly.
Okay. Yeah, let's give it a go.
So at the risk of maybe I should or shouldn't do this. This is our actual Google Cloud developer console for the Dev Talk shows, our organizational account. I'm going to not leave this up here the entire time because there are pieces that we certainly don't want to share, especially when we get the client secret. So I'm going to create a new project. We created a project when we've worked on this show on the latest video component. We created a project for that. I'm going to create a new project here, mainly so that I can delete this easily later. And we're going to say authentication. We'll say PBTS web authentication.
Okay. Sounds appropriate.
And in this project, so now I think I need to switch to the project. Oh, it's still working on it, I guess. I didn't realize that maybe it takes a little longer than I thought. I was hoping that, okay, good. So now I can go to its dashboard, and I think this is where I always get a little lost. I think I want to go to APIs. No, this is not it. Actually, I think the documentation might tell us here.
Google. We did create a project, so that's good.
In the OAuth consent screen. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I see one. So that's a good sign. OAuth consent screen. Okay. So choose how you want to configure and register your app. I think we'll say any user with a Google account.
Sounds fair.
And then it looks like, okay, it looks like there's more you have to do. Interesting. Fine. That makes sense, actually. If I want it, I would have to submit the app for verification if I want just anybody to be able to log in. I'm sure they do a little bit of checking to make sure that somebody isn't creating like the next spammer or honeypot or something. Yeah. So I'm going to say external, click create, and they want me to go ahead and provide these things. So we're going to say that the app name is the Dev Talk Show website. the email. Let's see. I don't know if we have an email that I could
We
use.
got the Outlook one.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess technically we have a Gmail one too.
What happened there? That's interesting that it. No, I'm not sending feedback. I wonder what I accidentally clicked that. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
Dev Talk Show
Yeah,
website.
I didn't see how it jumped either.
Oh, the devtalkshow@gmail.com. Fine. Okay, great. App logo, which I don't know. I may actually have an app logo that I can use. Let me see. Of course, now that I click that page, it seemed to go away. There it goes.
I mean, there is the if you have access to the assets repo.
I do. Except that it's really taking its time.
Of course.
Oh, wow. I even got the not responding for a second there. Okay. Dev Talk Show. And I don't remember. This one I think is transparent. I don't know if that matters. Okay. Good enough.
That works.
Okay. It doesn't look like these are required, although they're probably a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
Authorized domain. That's right. So, yes, we're going to need, they say add URI, and then you need to set the redirect URI. Now, because we're testing, I'm going to have to use the localhost port.
Mm-hmm.
Even kind of tell you how to do it.
Oh, I may not have time for this. Where you know where I'm going?
Yeah, we could have used like dev tunnels, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. maybe if we get through this, then I would love to try that. So what I don't remember is what our port is, and there's probably a quicker way. There's probably a correct way for me to check this out. Like, I bet you it's either sitting in app settings or it could be sitting in property launch settings.
There you go.
I could have figured this out probably by just running the app, which is probably what most of us would do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, well, at least here in Visual Studio at 7225. So let's put that in. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and it says don't specify the scheme. Now, actually, the interesting thing here is they're just asking for the domain. So I'm wondering if a little bit later you do the redirect URI.
Don't you still need the port?
Yeah. What does it say again?
I mean, the doc said to include the.
You're right. It did. Of course, what did I do with the docs? Here they are. In the it says the authorized redirect URI section.
Oh.
Authorized redirect URIs. When a domain is used on the consent screen, it must be pre-registered here.
Oh, it's not used on the consent screen.
So I think I can leave this, right? I think I can leave it. Developer contact information can also be here. Save and continue. And then, yeah, we're not, okay. So this, in fact, I was jumping ahead because it even says, put in this information, then step through scope, step through test users. That's all. This is actually all important stuff. And maybe that'll be the nice thing, is to come back and look at it. But then review the OAuth consent screen and go back to the dashboard. And so that's reviewed, back to the dashboard, and
the credentials tab. So the tab just above this one.
Right.
Yep.
Now I'm going to double check what comes up here.
Okay.
Because what we get are, I have no So, right, it says here, create credentials, right? And there's nothing on this screen yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and when I click this, I know there's a place where the client ID pops up.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of odd that it does, but that's just me. So I'm going to say, I'm going to click on that create credentials, and you pick OAuth client ID. That hopefully is self-explanatory. They want it to be a web application. And so far, I'm not getting. Oh, I see. Okay, this is not shown to end users. I just want to double check. And then there is an authorized redirect URI. So that'll have to be updated. So I think I can show this form pretty safely. We're creating an OAuth client ID, web application, TDS website. And then we do want, this is what it was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So let's get this added in. And I think it was 7255.
Yes.
7225.
Oh.
I knew whatever I said.
Double number.
I was positive whatever I said, it would not be exactly that. So, okay.
All right.
So
and
when
this
I click,
authorized redirect
right,
is where Google sends us back to once we authenticate.
yes, that's right. So we're essentially going out to them. They're creating the tokens that we need to trust later, and it comes back and says like, okay, when you come back, we want you to come back to sign in Google.
Yep.
The reason I'm going to click create off screen is I feel like yes,
Client secret somewhere.
Oh, it pops it right up. So, not that I couldn't always get rid of this later.
Yeah.
But the first
I
thing
mean, it's
it
kind
does,
of make sure they throw it in your face, right? Because that's the only time you're going to get it, usually.
yeah, certainly in some, I believe in many places in the Azure portal, it's your one time.
Yeah.
I have actually found in this process that I can come and retrieve the secret. If that's changed since the last time I did that, again, we always know YouTube videos are in the past. But now that I have copied that stuff down, in fact, let me double check. If I say, yeah, it is actually possible for me to see the secret again. But I can come back to this screen, and this is pretty good. I feel fine about this. And we now have an OAuth 2 client ID showing just a tiny bit of the client ID. I could copy it. And actually, if you click edit here, you can see the secret again. So we won't do that.
Nope.
Now, we have we've done that work now, but now the issue is we need those secrets to be stored in our app and in a place for our app. And we've talked many times on this show about the user secrets, which I think I'm going to just double check. I am not yet using in this app. I'm pretty sure that I'm not. So yeah, they're blank. So I'm happy to bring this back over. If you've never seen this before in the Visual Studio IDE, or you can also do this from command line, which is covered in the documentation, I can click manage user secret. I can right click on the project, manage user secrets, and you end up getting a file that sits well outside of your source folder. So there's no chance of you checking it in. But here's a place where you can put settings that you do not want to commit to your app settings file. Maybe these are things you're going to put into environment on the deployed website. Maybe you're going to use an app settings file in production, or maybe you're going to configure it in the portal settings. You don't have to use the portal, but in the web app settings, I can add those secrets right here. And so the way I'm going to do that is they are suggesting that, which is fine. I don't mind that set, but we'll learn a little bit here. They're saying authentication, Google client ID. This could really be whatever I want it to be, frankly.
Right.
At least I think that's true. Yes.
Yeah.
Because we pull the configuration ourselves. So, but in your code, when it says, oh, wow, it copied it in, kind of, that's funny. That's not what I expected. In your code, when it shows that colon separated key, you want to create a let's see. We want it to be a cascading thing where authentication, close. Let's see. That we want Google. And then and then we want another thing here. And this could be, I probably don't have this exactly right. I think it said client ID.
I believe so, yeah.
And then there's going to be a client ID there. And then wouldn't it be really nice if JSON allowed trailing? I think secrets, I think app settings, I don't know if it does. So this little layered approach of authentication Google client ID is what's going to map up when you set it colon separated in your code. So I need this basically. And I just have to go fill them in and save it.
Yep.
The other way to do this would be using the command line.
And I'll drop it in that same file.
Drop it in the same file. That's right. So let me off screen real quick. Set in our and our client secret. And then close the file. Okay. So, and they even talk to you a little bit about separator usage. Can't use the colon in bash. Just, so use something else. I think a double underscore.
Exactly.
Now we get to the nitty gritty. We have not modified our program CS to use those options yet. And they're showing you kind of some sample here. We're already going to see we're going to see some of this. Let's take a look. We'll go to our program CS. Interesting thing here is we only have to do this in the server side project of an interactive auto application, because as we've been talking about this whole time, it's taking the account components and forcing them to be server side rendered. So we don't have to do this on both sides, quote unquote. Let's see. It's builder.services, which I don't know ever gets. I don't know that I can do. I think I can maybe just put it. There is a builder.services. I'm trying to figure out for sure. Is there a place that I want to put this that matters? It may not matter because we're just building the services. We haven't built them yet. That's what line 40 is doing. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to say builder.services. Interesting that it's so add authentication, add Google. Interesting that it is trying. I like how Copilot is trying to take some guesses here at what I might want. Oh, what did you do? What happened?
You went authentication, not authorization?
No, what happened is I got a notification that took me out of the screen, and then it just destroyed everything. So add authentication. Now, interesting what Copilot's doing. Copilot's like, well, do you want them all? I'm going to go ahead and accept it, and then we'll play with it a little bit.
Yeah.
I definitely want add Google. I don't need these other ones for now, but it's interesting to see. And then let's see how correct the Copilot code was.
That doesn't seem to like that add Google method.
Well, I think we've got a little bit more work to do in terms of NuGet, but options for options, I'm fine with.
Yep.
We did use this exact same path, so that should be fine. Yep. So I'm fine with all of this. The only thing that we're missing, though, is add Google. It's like, well, wait, where's the assembly reference? And it's like, did it even talk about it, or did it not talk about it?
Doesn't look like it did yet.
You know what's odd is no, I do not see where it's talked about it. So we'll talk about it. I'm actually curious how much the IDE knows here. If I say quick action and refactoring, it seems to be a little confused. How about we ask Copilot? What's really missing here is we are missing a NuGet package. Do I say why?
Or dash fix / fix.
Oh, /fix. Okay. What we're really missing here is we're missing the package that brings in Google Authentication. Everything else is there, and I'm just curious what it comes up with. I thought it might say
down a little bit.
Is it? Or did it suggest to change a different file? I'm not really sure. This really is a NuGet problem. So,
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go to manage NuGet packages, and we're going to see a whole bunch of them installed, including these ASP.NET Core Identity packages. And so if I go to browse, and I might do well enough just to type Google. Nope, that's not going to be that. It's not going to be that easy. So ASP.NET Core Identity. I might have to end up going to look this up, but I think it's something like this. No, this is not it. What are the packages installed right now? Because there's one for authentication. In fact, probably the easiest way is if I go to Program CS and I say, it might just be like authorization.google. So let's try authorization.google. Oops, man, not typing very well at all today. That's odd. I'm still struggling to find it. Okay.
So here you go.
You already have it?
Oh, I searched NuGet for it. So It is Microsoft.ASP.core.authentication.google. And I think you went to authentication, but it didn't pop up high enough on the list.
Oh, yeah. I probably was close.
Yep.
Okay. So this is what I was looking for. We do need to add this. We're going to install it. Going to make changes to the solution, accept lawyer stuff. And now, ta-da!
It worked.
That's it.
Squiggle's gone away.
Squiggle went away. It's an extension method. You don't even have to add anything up here. This is complaining that what if the config is null? You're not handling it. And to which I say, okay, fine, whatever. And
I know it's not.
We probably should. But,
yes.
But, and I do think that we've strived to say we should work towards production quality code on the show.
Yeah. But we're already 3 minutes past.
Yeah. So let's see now. I don't have the external login pulled out into my own login component. We could always look at that another time. But if I go to login, this has changed.
Wow.
Because of everything we've talked about on the show so far. It detected the new auth scheme and it said, well, okay, use another service to log in. I will click Google. It's going to be like, okay, I've certainly got a Google account I can use. Hopefully folks have seen this kind of thing before. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's going to ask me to two-factor here.
Oh.
Because I do use two-factor on just about everything.
As you should.
So, and no, please don't ever save my password. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Edge. Just, I like you, but every browser I've been saying no to. So hopefully folks have seen that before and that's okay. But here it is. You've successfully authenticated with Google. Now they want to match it up to an email address. And then they went ahead and showed everybody the email address anyway. I wasn't paying attention there. And then I've got to pretend that I've confirmed the account. And so now I've confirmed the email. And now I can log in with the external provider. And, we're seeing that I'm now logged in. So my hard work, I am glad, though, that I still did some of it off screen. But my hard work to say, hey, we'll show my whatever. I guess I just have to live with that. But that works now. Our login component even gets to take advantage of this.
Oh, yeah. Very true.
Yeah. Even though I can't log in with it yet, we could always add that to our login component, or maybe we would make a second component. There's interesting ways to think about that. But once I've logged in using this method, because our login component transforms when someone's logged in and says, well, let me identify who you are and give you an opportunity to log out, that works.
Nice.
So after all that.
Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing with all that is, yeah, out of the box, you got a database you can throw your usernames and passwords in, but not very secure. If your database gets hacked, you're kind of, have other kinds of problems to worry about. And here in less than 20 minutes, we're using an external identity provider. It gets us out of having to manage user passwords, manage users getting logged out, all of the things you would have to if you had the database owned on your own.
Yeah. And the code was this, the end.
Yeah, that's it. And registering an identity, registering a project.
It was all set up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was all set up. The code was a piece of cake. And then what's really nice about the identity components in Blazor, and also, frankly, to be fair, in .NET 7 and prior, the Razor Pages based identity stuff, which worked in Razor Pages, works in Blazor. That stuff handled it all for you. In this case, though, what I hope people watching is they got to see a little bit about what is it actually doing? What is the external logins piece actually doing? And we can see now that it is making a decision based on how many external logins it found. We also got to see that even the Blazor identity components are still running server side, even if you pick interactive auto, no matter what. And it might be interesting to run through some of the other templates just to see what does it do in each case.
Sure.
But they're still server side. So, which makes sense. We got to talk about all that. We got a really great note here that, did I goof on the, I had said.
On the link?
Oh, I did screw up.
The show opens?
Yes, it's because it opens in a new tab to I tried to add to folks watching live. I tried to put in a link to go to the Dev Talk Show, and I clearly got that totally wrong. So thank you very much. Let me copy that again. The reason why this is a little tricky to copy is because when I go to this page, it immediately transforms the link. So now I've pasted it again into the chat. I'll try to include it in the show notes. That's our LinkedIn page. No, there isn't a whole lot going on there yet, but we do know that if we get 150 followers, we can add that to our growing list of streaming platforms, which currently is YouTube, Twitch, also on Twitter, and maybe more. So,
yeah.
All right. Hopefully.
Very cool.
Let's see. We'll go back here, and then we'll have our funny branding for a second. Relay back up there. There we are. There's the two of us again. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think that was really cool.
We got through it, and in relatively short order. Both of us, I don't think, had a 9 a.m. this morning, so that's why a little less caution to the time. Hopefully that did not get in your way. And so definitely thanks for pointing out the LinkedIn link to us. Appreciate it. And thank you for joining us this morning. I think for those folks who watch and pay attention to the show, I think that's it until after the Christmas holiday.
You have your Thursday meeting?
Well, I don't actually.
Oh.
So I just wasn't sure. We hadn't talked about it.
Yeah,
so,
I'm good for trying one tomorrow if you want to continue.
All right. Well, then that's a possibility, and that would be a cool idea. So in any case, we'll have to confirm on that later this afternoon.
Fair enough.
For some reason, I had it in my head like, well, this will probably be it till after Christmas, but it doesn't have to be. So, and besides, it's almost funny. I feel like there's a little bit more free time this time of year. But yeah. Anyways, hope that helped you folks. If you're having fun with Blazor, let us know. What are you building with it?
Yeah, definitely.
How have you integrated login yet? Are you going to do it later? one of the things we'd love to explore is, how do you add it later? How do you add in and take more ownership of this code, which is what we've been doing. I think we're trying to take more ownership of the Blazor Identity code, because guess what? We do own it.
Yeah.
The moment you finish file new project, it's yours. All right. Well, anything else? Or are we good?
I think we're good. I think we're
All
good.
right.
It's definitely winding down. Things are there's less announcements, there's less things to do. So so we can focus and spend time with the family, which is what we should be doing this time of year.
Yeah. And hopefully you are doing the same, no matter where you are and what holidays you are enjoying.
Yep.
Have a great one. Thank you so much for joining us, whether it's live or on the replay. And we'll see all of you next time on the Dev Talk Show.